December 1942. A German intelligence officer sits alone in a smoky room in Berlin. Before him, a series of grainy aerial photographs, intercepted reports, and strange satellite data. Rows upon rows of metal stretching farther than any factory he's ever seen. And stamped at the bottom of one photo, a single name, Willow Run. He circles the name in red ink. Impossible, he mutters in disbelief. Reports claim this single American plant is producing a 4-engine bomber, the B-24 Liberator, with 1.5 million individual parts, and completing one every 63 minutes. To the Germans, this sounds like pure propaganda. No nation in human history has ever turned war machines into mass production. Factories are supposed to make cars, not bombers. And yet, something extraordinary is happening across the ocean. While Europe burns under the shadow of the Luftwaffe, a new kind of weapon is being forged in America, not in the skies but on the factory floor. This is the story of Willow Run, Henry Ford Sepp's industrial gamble, where ordinary men and women, farmers, mechanics and mothers, built a bomber so complex, so vast in design, it would take 1.5 million parts to fly. But it wasn't just America watching. Across the Atlantic, German spies scrambled to understand how Ford had done it, how a car company had turned into the largest bomber factory on Earth. Their reports would soon shock the Reich High Command, because behind those blueprints and assembly lines lay something even more dangerous than bombs, the idea that freedom itself could be manufactured. This is the story of the factory that built a bomber every 63 minutes, and how it changed the course of World War II. As Germany begins to investigate this mysterious plant, Ford's engineers face their own crisis, the impossible dream of turning an automobile assembly line into the beating heart of the Allied air war. Before the war, Detroit was known as the city of speed. Ford's assembly lines had changed the world, bringing motion to millions and making America hum with horsepower. But by 1939, Europe was burning again. While the Luftwaffe leveled Warsaw and the British prepared for invasion, Henry Ford, the man who had once revolutionized peacetime industry, refused to believe in war. He was 76 years old, stubborn and fiercely isolationist. He despised war profiteering and vowed his company would not build weapons of destruction. But history had other plans. When Hitler's forces stormed across France in 1940, the world changed overnight. Suddenly, Britain stood alone, and America, though not yet in the fight, began to stir. President Franklin D. Roosevelt called on Sepp's industry to become the great arsenal of democracy. Factories that once made cars would now make tanks, jeeps, engines, and most crucially, bombers that could strike deep into enemy territory. But there was a problem. The B-24 Liberator was one of the most complex machines ever built, with over 1.5 million parts, thousands of rivets, and 4 massive engines. Each one took a team of skilled workers weeks to complete. No one, not even the military, believed it could be built on a moving assembly line. That sips when Charles Sorensen, Ford Sepp's brilliant production chief, made a bold promise. We still mass-produce the Liberator like we did the Model T. He envisioned a plant so vast that bombers would roll off the line like cars, each one ready for flight every hour. It sounded insane. Even Ford's own engineers doubted it could be done. But Sorensen didn't blink. He drove west of Detroit to a patch of farmland near Ypsilanti, Michigan, and pointed to the empty horizon. There, he said, we shall build it. By 1941, construction began on what would become the largest factory in human history. 1 mile long, 65 acres under one roof. A single building so large that weather patterns formed inside it. And soon something even more astonishing happened. As Ford's isolationism gave way to mobilization, tens of thousands of men and women answered the call. Farmers left their fields. Housewives traded aprons for welding masks. They poured into Willow Run by the trainload to build bombers for a war not yet won. But the world wasn't just watching Ford's transformation. In Berlin, whispers began to circulate through the corridors of the Abwehr, German military intelligence. A new American factory had appeared out of nowhere. Its purpose, unknown. Its output, unbelievable. The Nazis wanted answers. And they were about to discover that America SIP's greatest weapon wasn't set to plane, or a bomb. It was the power to build faster than the enemy could destroy. As the walls of Willow Run rise from the Michigan soil, German agents scramble to uncover what Ford is building, and inside the plant, the first test of the impossible is about to begin. They came from every corner of America. Farmers from Iowa, miners from Kentucky, housewives from Ohio, each carrying little more than a lunch pail and a promise to help win a war they didn't start. In 1942, Ford SEP's new Willow Run plant became a living city, a place where 42,000 workers clocked in day and night. For many, it was their first job in a factory. For others, it was their first time away from home. They built not cars but wings, engines and dreams, all under the same colossal roof. Among them was Lillian Roberts, a 23-year-old mother of two from Flint. She had never touched a welding torch in her life. Her husband was serving with the 8th Air Force in England. When she saw the recruitment poster that read "The bomber plant needs you," she took the train that night. In a letter to her sister, she wrote, "When I touch the metal, I imagine my hands keeping him safe. Maybe the plane I help build will bring him home." Lillian became one of thousands of women known later as Rosie the Riveters, the quiet army that turned Ford's machinery into America's lifeline. But outside the factory gates, another kind of worker moved silently. A German agent known only by his codename, Der Uhrmacher, the watchmaker. He was an Abwehr operative posing as a Swedish trade consultant. His orders were simple: discover what Ford was building. His reports to Berlin began cautiously. "Ford has constructed a facility unlike any in Europe. I believe they are manufacturing aircraft components on a conveyor system. The efficiency is extraordinary." Berlin scoffed. The Luftwaffe's factories required weeks to build a single bomber, with elite engineers and precision tools. The idea that American auto workers could do it faster was considered laughable. But by mid-1942, his tone changed. The production numbers are accelerating. If true, this could alter the air war. I recommend immediate counterintelligence review. Back in Michigan, the workers didn't know they were being watched. They only knew exhaustion, pride, and purpose. Every hour, the assembly lines thundered. 1.5 million parts moving in perfect rhythm. A bomber wing here, a landing gear there. Each day brought new challenges: parts shortages, breakdowns, winter storms freezing the hangar doors. But every night, the lights of Willow Run burned bright against the snow. America Tit's arsenal, alive and awake. For the workers, this wasn't just industry, it was defiance. They weren't soldiers with rifles, but they fought their own kind of war, one shift at a time. Each bolt turned, each rivet fastened, was a small victory against tyranny. But even as the dream of mass production came alive, cracks were forming, mechanical, logistical, and human. Because building a bomber every 63 minutes was still a fantasy. And the first test was about to expose how fragile that dream really was. Inside Willow Run, the first completed B-24 stands gleaming under the factory lights. But as the engines roar for the maiden flight, disaster strikes. Early 1943. After 2 years of feverish construction, the Willow Run bomber plant is alive, but barely breathing. The first fully assembled B-24 Liberator rolls onto the icy Michigan airstrip. Hundreds of workers line the runway, holding their breath. This is the moment they've all been working for. Proof that Ford SIP's promise wasn't to it a fantasy. The pilot guns the engines. 4 propellers scream to life. The massive bomber lurches down the runway, and then, with a groan, its landing gear collapses. Metal screams. Sparks rain across the tarmac. The dream has crashed. Inside the Ford boardroom, tension is palpable. Henry Ford, aging and ill-tempered, blames the engineers. The Army Air Forces blames Ford. And the workers, exhausted and undertrained, feel the weight of both. Charles Sorensen, the man who designed Willow Run's production system, stands in silence as the army officer slams his fist on the table. You promised us a bomber an hour. So far we've got a scrap heap. But Sorensen refuses to back down. He knows the potential is there, hidden beneath layers of confusion, bureaucracy, and inexperience. Ford has built factories that shaped a century. Now, it must learn to build for survival. The problem wasn't the dream, it was the transition. The automobile assembly line was built for repetition. But a B-24 Liberator wasn't a car, it was an engineering nightmare. 1.5 million parts. Over 300,000 rivets. More than 30,000 blueprints, and 80,000 precision operations. Every section, wings, fuselage, engines, demanded perfect synchronization. A single mistake could ground the plane, or kill the crew. To make matters worse, the workforce turned over constantly. Farmers weren't machinists. Housewives weren't riveters. Each week, hundreds quit, exhausted or homesick. Each week new ones arrived, wide-eyed and untrained. Production chaos reigned. And across the ocean, German intelligence was taking notes. Der Uhrmacher, the watchmaker, reported back to Berlin with a smirk in his coded message. The Americans are drowning in their own machinery. Willow Run is a failure. Their efficiency myth is collapsing. The Abwehrsetz analysts agreed. The Reich's factories may have been battered, but at least they were controlled. In contrast, the Americans seemed reckless, building too much, too fast. Berlin relaxed. They believed the industrial miracle had failed before it began. But they were wrong. Because buried within the chaos of Willow Run was something the Germans never understood, American adaptation. Sorensen and his team refused to quit. They redesigned the workflow. Instead of moving the workers to the bomber, they moved the bomber to the workers. The world's first moving aircraft assembly line was born. They split production into stations. Engines, fuselage, wings, electricals, each operating in perfect sequence. Every 40 minutes, another bomber moved one step closer to flight. Training improved. Morale rose. And for the first time, the impossible began to look inevitable. The first successful B-24 from Willow Run took to the skies in August 1942. It wasn't perfect, but it flew. And when its landing gear locked in place, the factory erupted in cheers. The workers had proven the dream could fly. But they had no idea that their success had triggered alarms in Berlin. And that the German spies, now realizing their mistake, were about to risk everything to uncover Ford's secret. As Willow Run begins to turn chaos into order, a new report lands on an Abwehr desk in Berlin, stamped UR Gent. Inside, the words that will shock the German High Command. Ford Motor Company is building one bomber every 63 minutes. Winter, 1943. The Willow Run plant never sleeps. Day and night, the factory's heartbeat echoes through the Michigan snow. But now there's a different kind of tension in the air. Someone is leaking information. The FBI has begun quiet investigations. Reports of mysterious inspectors on the assembly line, blueprints misplaced, machines sabotaged. No one knows who to trust. Charles Sorensen, burdened by exhaustion, writes in his diary, "Every delay costs lives at the front. Every breakdown here means more boys die out there." He isn't exaggerating. By now, the Allied bombing campaign over Europe is intensifying. Losses are staggering. Crews are being shot from the sky faster than replacements can be trained. The Air Force needs bombers now. And Willow Run is falling behind schedule. The problem isn't just mechanical. It's human. The workers are burning out. Wages are low, hours long, and the promise of a bomber every hour feels like fantasy again. Rumors of sabotage spread through the workforce like smoke. Every broken tool, every faulty bolt, becomes a question mark. Meanwhile, in Detroit, Der Uhrmacher, the watchmaker, sits in a cheap hotel room. His hands tremble as he tunes a radio transmitter to a secret frequency. He sends a coded message to Berlin. The Americans have mastered moving line assembly. Bomber production accelerating beyond expectations. Repeat, 1 aircraft completed every hour. The message, intercepted weeks later by Allied counterintelligence, confirms their fears. German eyes are inside the heart of America's war machine. But the Abwehr-set triumph is short-lived. Days later, the FBI raids several safe houses across the Midwest. Among the captured materials, sketches of the B-24's wing structure, lists of workers and production schedules. The watchmaker vanishes without a trace. Some say he fled to Canada. Others believe he was caught and silenced. The truth remains one of the war's industrial mysteries. Back at Willow Run, fear tightens its grip. FBI agents patrol the factory floor in plain clothes. Workers whisper of spies in their midst. The hum of machinery now carries an edge of paranoia. But amid the suspicion, something deeper takes hold: unity. Lillian Roberts, the riveter from Flint, writes in her journal, "They say there are spies here. Maybe that's true. But I don't care who's watching. I'm going to finish this wing. Because somewhere that plane might bring my husband home." That spirit, raw, defiant, unbreakable, spreads through the factory like fire. Production rises again. The dream refuses to die. By spring 1944, Willow Run is back in motion. A bomber every 90 minutes, then 75, then 63. The assembly line hums with precision, the rhythm of a nation at war. But every triumph comes at a cost. Exhaustion deepens, accidents rise. And with D-Day approaching, the stakes have never been higher. Ford's dream is alive, but so is the fear that one mistake, one leak, could undo it all. As Allied bombers roar toward Normandy, another message slips through the Atlantic ether. This time from Berlin. "We underestimated them. The Americans have achieved the impossible." And for the first time, the German High Command begins to understand they are no longer fighting just an army. They are fighting an industrial civilization. Spring 1944. From the skies above Michigan, the Willow Run plant no longer looks like a factory. It looks like a living organism. Metal flows through its veins. Wings, engines, and hope pulse in perfect rhythm. Every 63 minutes, another B-24 Liberator rolls off the assembly line, its silver body gleaming in the sunlight, its nose pointed toward Europe. After years of chaos, exhaustion, and doubt, Ford's dream has come alive. The impossible has become routine. Henry Ford rarely visits Willow Run now. Age and illness keep him confined to Dearborn. But his son Edsel Ford, who believed in the project when few others did, continues to drive it forward, even as his own health deteriorates under relentless stress. In April 1943, Edsel dies at only 49. The news spreads through the factory like wildfire. For the workers, it feels personal. The man who had championed them through failure and fear is gone. Yet, even in grief, they keep building. They keep moving. Because now they understand what their work means. Every bomber they finish isn't just metal and rivets. It sups a message to the world. You cannot intimidate a free people. Across the ocean, the German High Command receives an intelligence briefing. Its stats titled simply, "Industrial Output of the United States, 1944. The numbers are staggering. In that year alone, America builds nearly 100,000 aircraft, more than Germany, Japan, and Italy combined. A significant share comes from one address, Willow Run, Ypsilanti, Michigan. The report lands on Hermann Goering's desk, head of the Luftwaffe. He reads the figures twice, then slams the paper down in disbelief. "This is not production," he says. "This is black magic." But there was no magic. Only ingenuity, teamwork, and relentless discipline. Ford Thitt's assembly line now produces so efficiently that workers synchronize by sound. The clank of rivet guns, the hum of conveyor belts, the hiss of hydraulic lifts. Each bomber has 1.5 million parts, yet the choreography is so exact that no section waits for another. Within the hour, a bomber is rolled out, engines tested, wings locked, ready to fly. Test pilots nicknamed the plant the Grand Canyon of industry. They'd taxi the planes out one after another, the sky above Ypsilanti filled with silver wings. The workers begin marking each bomber with chalk initials, small signatures under the nose art. LR for Lillian Roberts, JS for Joe Sanders, an ex-farmer turned mechanic. Each mark a whisper of pride, a promise carried across the ocean. And when news arrives of Allied bombers hammering targets deep in Germany, some built by their very hands, they realize something profound. They are part of history sets turning gears. For the first time, the Allies hold the advantage. The sky belongs to them. German cities burn not from vengeance, but from industrial momentum. Every raid, every formation of B-24 Sades, a testament to the power of a single idea born in a Detroit workshop. The spies who once doubted now fall silent. The Abwehr, crippled and fragmented by internal chaos, can no longer keep up. The Reich's factories are being flattened faster than they can rebuild. And in Berlin, one phrase echoes through intelligence briefings again and again. Fordist's plant is an arsenal disguised as a miracle. But for the men and women at Willow Run, the miracle is not victory. That's endurance. They've worked through snowstorms, blackouts, and heartbreak. And now, they're helping win a war from half a world away. Each shift ends with the same ritual. The factory whistle blows. The workers look up as a newly built B-24 climbs into the clouds. And someone always says quietly, "That one sips. Ours." As the Allies prepare for D-Day, Willow Run's bombers fill the skies of Europe. But the factory SEP's triumph comes at a cost: fatigue, sacrifice, and a moral reckoning. How much humanity must be spent to fuel the machinery of freedom? Summer, 1944. Europe trembles under the thunder of thousands of engines. The once invincible Reich looks up and sees the sky itself turning against them. From bases across England, endless lines of B-24 Liberators climb into formation. Most of them were born from one place, the Ford plant at Willow Run. Each one, a miracle of steel and sweat, assembled by the hands of workers half a world away. The B-24 SIRs are the backbone of Operation Point Blank, the Allied air campaign designed to cripple Germany's war machine before the D-Day invasion. Their targets: ball-bearing plants, oil refineries, synthetic fuel depots, aircraft factories. Every part of the Reich that feeds its armies is now under assault. Flying at 20,000 feet, the Liberators move in precise geometric formations. Each bomber spaced perfectly apart, each crew member trusting the one beside him with his life. Inside it's up to a world of noise and frost. Minus 40 degrees in the gunner SEP's turret. Frost forming on the oxygen mask. The smell of fuel, sweat and fear. In the bomb bays, the payloads carry names written in chalk. From Willow Run with Love. Built by Lillian R. For Edsel. Small gestures of defiance. Fragments of humanity traveling into enemy skies. In Berlin, those same B-24s become a daily nightmare. The Luftwaffe scrambles to intercept, but fuel shortages and Allied escort fighters cut their numbers in half. Every week, American production replaces losses faster than Germany can even refuel. One German general, inspecting the ruins of an oil facility, writes in his report, "Their factories are invisible. They fight us from across an ocean." He sticks right. Ford SEP's assembly lines in Michigan, General Motors in Detroit, Boeing in Seattle. They've turned the entire United States into one colossal weapon. The Allies no longer measure war in divisions. They measure it in output per hour. By early 1944, Willow Run is producing a B-24 every 63 minutes. In a single day, 16 bombers roll off its line, each one immediately flown to a modification center, armed, and sent to the front. Within weeks, those planes are bombing railway yards in France, supply depots in Belgium, and industrial centers deep inside the Reich. Every plane carries the fingerprints of thousands of American workers, the welders, riveters, and mechanics whose labor is now rewriting military strategy. The sky has become the new assembly line. Lillian Roberts receives her first telegram from the War Department in months. Her husband's unit, the 8th Air Force, survived a mission over Ploiești, Romania. He writes to her soon after, "Your plane flew today. She got us home. Thank you." She keeps that letter folded in her pocket for the rest of the war. Willow Run becomes a legend, a symbol of what democracy can build when tested by tyranny. To the Germans, it sebs a factory. To the Allies, it's proof that the will of free people can outproduce the machinery of fear. Each bomber in the sky carries not just bombs, but belief. Belief that an ocean apart, a nation of ordinary citizens has built something extraordinary. The German spies who once laughed at the idea of a bomber an hour now report only silence. Because what they set witnessing is no longer an experiment. It sets a revolution. As the Allies prepare for D-Day, the full power of Willow Run's production fills the skies of Europe. But behind the triumph, a new question emerges. When victory comes, what will become of this unstoppable machine and the people who built it? June 6, 1944. Before dawn breaks, the Channel is already trembling. Across 60 miles of dark water, the largest armada in history moves toward France. But above it all, in the cold, grey skies, fly the children of Willow Run. Hundreds of B-24 Liberators cross the French coast, their bomb bays loaded, their crews silent. Each one built by the hands of people who have never seen a battlefield, but who have built its outcome. Their mission: clear the skies, destroy the coastal defences, and shatter the German logistics before the first Allied soldier sets foot on Omaha Beach. The margin for error? None. In the air, Lieutenant Mark Hughes, a 23-year-old pilot from Kansas, grips the yoke of a B-24 named Liberty Bell. His bomber was finished at Willow Run just 3 months ago. He remembers his father writing to him, "Son, maybe one day, the machines I help build will help bring you home." That day has come. Below, German flak erupts like black flowers in the sky. Shrapnel tears through fuselages. Engines sputter, wings shear, bombers fall. But the formation holds. From 20,000 feet, the Liberators drop their payloads. Bridges collapse, railway lines vanish, bunkers erupt into flame. For every bomber lost, 2 more arrive. For every German gun that fires, 10 targets disappear. The skies, once owned by the Luftwaffe, now belong to Ford. In Berlin, the German High Command watches in disbelief. Abwehr reports flood in, production unbroken. Losses replaced within days. Factories protected by distance. One colonel slams his fist on the table and mutters, "They are building war, like we build cars." He signed as not wrong. What once took German factories months to replace now takes Ford hours. It's not just a difference in capacity, it's a difference in civilization. A nation built on freedom has outproduced an empire built on fear. As the Allies secure the Normandy beaches, Hughes' bomber limps home on one engine. He writes in his flight log, "If you ever doubt the power of what we stir fighting for, look down at France and see what we are set built." Back in Michigan, Lillian Roberts finishes her shift at Willow Run. She doesn't know it yet, but the bomber she riveted last month flew over Normandy that morning. The next day, she still read the headlines, "Allies land in France, invasion underway." And she set will whisper to herself, "We did it." From that day onward, the tide of war never turns back. Every hour, another bomber rolls off Willow Run set's line, and every hour, the Reich grows weaker. Factories once hidden beneath snow and secrecy in Michigan now echo across the world, their rhythm matching the pulse of a nation united in purpose. The spies who once mocked the idea of a bomber an hour now send their final message to Berlin. The miracle is real, and it sits winning the war. In the end, it wasn't set just bombs or bullets that broke the Reich. It was belief. The belief that freedom could build faster, think sharper, and endure longer than tyranny ever could. And from the fires of that belief came a truth no spy could hide: that Ford's factory of peace had become one of the greatest weapons of war. As Europe begins to turn the corner toward victory, a new question looms. When the war ends, what will happen to Willow Run? And to the people whose sweat and courage powered a miracle of production? By the summer of 1945, the war in Europe was over. The Allies had pushed the Reich to its knees, and high above the ruins of Germany, the bombers of Willow Run, the B-24 Serv, built with 1.5 million parts each, had played their part in every decisive strike. At Willow Run, the factory that once thundered day and night now quieted. Workers who had labored for years under relentless pressure stepped out of the hangars to a world forever changed. Some returned home to families. Some moved on to new careers, carrying the skills they had learned into peacetime industry. And some, like Lillian Roberts, carried memories of loss, courage, and the hum of machinery that had once seemed alive. The human cost had been immense. Accidents claimed lives on the factory floor. Exhaustion was a constant companion. Yet every bolt turned, every rivet fastened, had saved countless lives overseas. Letters flooded in from returning airmen. Your plane brought me home. I saw the bridge fall, your hands made it possible. Thank you for keeping the skies free. For the workers, it was proof that their labor was more than mechanical. It was moral. Across the Atlantic, German intelligence struggled to comprehend what had happened. The spies who once sneered at the idea of a bomber every 63 minutes had been outpaced, outthought, and ultimately outproduced. Berlin CEP's reports finally admitted what the Americans already knew. Ford's Willow Run plant was not just a factory, it was a weapon of civilization. One man CEP's vision, multiplied by tens of thousands, changed the course of war. In the years that followed, Willow Run returned to peacetime production, cars instead of bombers. But the echoes remained. The factory had proven that ordinary people could achieve the extraordinary, that the combination of ingenuity, courage, and sheer perseverance could tilt the scales of history. And for the men and women who had built the sky itself, there was pride, quiet, enduring, and unshakable. Lillian Roberts, now older, reflected in her memoir, "We didn't just build planes. We built hope, and we carried it over an ocean to change the world." Willow Run became more than steel and rivets. It became a symbol of what a nation can achieve when freedom, purpose, and human determination align. The war ended, but the story of courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice lives on, in every plane that flew, every life saved, and every lesson for the generations to come. Decades have passed since the last B-24 rolled off Willow Run's assembly line. The factory that once thundered day and night now lies quiet, a monument to human ambition and ingenuity. Yet the echoes remain. The hands that riveted, welded, and tightened every bolt, they shaped more than aircraft. They shaped history. The story of Willow Run is not just a story of machines. It is a story of people, ordinary Americans who answered an extraordinary call. Farmers, students, mothers, fathers, engineers, and even spies, all caught in a vast experiment of willpower, skill, and vision. It is a reminder that the tide of history can be turned not only by generals and politicians, but by thousands of quiet, determined acts of courage. German intelligence once laughed at the idea of a bomber every 63 minutes. They did not understand that freedom and determination are not measured in spreadsheets, blueprints, or factory output. They are measured in the hearts of people who refuse to quit. The lessons of Willow Run echo across generations. Human ingenuity can overcome the impossible. Collaboration and perseverance can outmatch even the most formidable enemy. Ordinary people, when united by purpose, can create extraordinary change. And as we look back on that incredible feat of engineering and human will, we realize something profound. The story of Willow Run is not just a story of war, it is a story of humanity at its best, in the darkest of times. If this story moved you, remember the hands that built the sky, the courage that carried freedom, and the legacy of those who believed in what could be. Because history is not just behind us. It lives in every choice we make, every act of courage, and every dream we refuse to abandon. And that is how one factory, one vision, and 1.5 million parts changed the course of the world, one bomber at a time.